Hello everyone! Thank you so much for tuning back in to Nintendo Everything Refresh. We are the official podcast of NintendoEverything.com, and we're just coming at you every week with a little bit of Nintendo news, maybe some broader industry news, what we've been playing, what we've been finding exciting in the world of Nintendo. And we've got some pretty big news this week. I think I said this last week, but it's like every week where we think, oh, there's not going to be too much going on. There's always something. But stick around because we've got a fun little bonus segment at the end of the episode today. I'm not going to spoil what it is. You got to listen to the end. But we're going to have a pretty fun discussion. Yeah, I know. Bringing up the mystery. Happy Mother's Day to all of our moms and moms-to-be out there. And thank you everyone who has listened to our show so far. We are a small but mighty podcast, and if you want to spread the word, let your friends know if you've been listening to us for all 7 episodes now. This is episode 7. Very exciting. We are on all of the streaming platforms, so if you don't want to watch us on YouTube, you can find us on the streaming platform of your choice. But as always, it's not just me here. Today we've got Louisa Estrella.
Hey guys, happy to be here again.
And we have got Nicholas Shade.
Hello, everyone.
And don't worry, everyone. Dennis, we all love Dennis. He's still here. We didn't kick him off the show. He's doing great. He'll be back.
He'll be back soon.
But yes, absolutely. In the meantime, I guess I should mention there is also on our YouTube channel, just before we get into the news, Louise, you had a little bonus kind of podcasty thing with Nicholas, right?
Yeah, I recorded a 1 hour long discussion with Nicholas about Xenoblade, a very spoilery discussion. So if you already finished all the games in the franchise and want to hear our opinions about it, go check it out. It was really fun to record, and I think it's also the final product is really fun to listen.
Mm-hmm. Love it. Yeah, that will definitely help get the Xenoblade hype up to maximum levels before the game comes out. All right. Well, it's not every week that we get an inside look at how Nintendo works, although it does feel like we've gotten quite a bit of it lately. But everyone is probably a little familiar with Reggie Fils-Aimé. He is Nintendo's previous president, Nintendo of America, I should specify. And he was with Nintendo for quite a while. I don't even know how long, but definitely through like the Wii and the DS days and all the way up through the beginning of the Switch's life. He might have been around a little bit longer, but he's been with Nintendo through a lot of its recent growth. And he put out a book just this last week called Disrupting the Game, From the Bronx to the Top of Nintendo. And as expected, when the former president of Nintendo of America is coming out, there is some really interesting tidbits just from his perspective about the launch of some of these systems. And so what we've done is we've kind of gone through the news that came out, and we've each kind of picked something to talk about that we thought was super interesting from the book. And so Louise, I want to start with you. So what do you think was one of the more interesting tidbits to come out this week from Reggie himself?
So particularly, I think this was one of the first that came out on the news, was a tidbit from his book where he talks about Wii Sports. So the situation was that Nintendo Japan was did not want Wii Sports to come bundled with the Wii. As we know, it happens, and almost everyone bought Wii with Wii Sports together at launch. So Reggie he said that Miyamoto and Iwata, mostly Miyamoto, was really against the idea of giving Wii Sports for free with the Wii during launch. And I think it was really interesting to read about that, because he said that Iwata specifically said that Nintendo does not give games for free, because those games take a lot of time to produce, and they like to make sure that the developers are receiving what they deserve for what they did. And right. It made so much sense to read that, because Nintendo saying we do not give games for free, it gives us an insight of how they think, but it's something that it really has been their attitude over the years. So you can really understand how they think at the at the other side of the world in Japan. It's really a different culture and the way that it works. Because Wii Sports was not actually they were giving a game for free, but I think the idea was to actually make Wii, to show how Wii worked, how the motion controls worked in a way that anyone could understand it. I think we all can agree that it was a good call from Reggie to actually make the game comes bundled with Wii, because it was not only the first experience that most people had with Wii, but it was a game that made the console skyrockets in popularity because anyone could understand Wii Sports. Your grandma, your father, your mother. It was a game literally for the whole family. And I think if that wasn't the case, maybe we would not have been the success that it actually was. I think it was a very important decision that he made. And really interesting to see that Nintendo was not on the board for that idea.
Yeah, no, I think you pretty much hit the nail on the head. I mean, the Wii and Wii Sports, like, they come together. Like, I'm not just talking about, like, in the box, but, like, when you think about it, you associate them together, you know? And I think, especially in terms of how they wanted to get as many people as possible to buy this console, as any company does, you know, if you're trying to appeal to all the parents and the grandparents out there, they're not necessarily going to want to go out and buy an expensive video game console and then have to buy games for it, right? Like it's going to be an easier sell if it comes with something that, you know, is already going to give them something that they can just pick up and play. You know, and even if you're like new to video games, it's not hard to wrap your head around. And yeah, it was really just fascinating to hear that he had to convince the office in Japan about it. Although I can't say I'm super surprised because, yeah, it's just there's just differences in just how, you know, business works in different places, and you know, the Nintendo of America, I guess at the time, you know, they were coming off the GameCube, and the GameCube like sold well, you know, but it wasn't this massive sales juggernaut, you know, not compared to the PlayStation 2 or whatever. And so I also wonder if that, you know, kind of helped make it easier for Reggie to persuade the Japanese office, like, hey, if we want to compete, we have to, you know, get people to care again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it does make me wonder, though, because it's not like they had always been completely averse to this idea of bundling games with the consoles. I mean, one of the most well-known ones, like the NES launching with Super Mario Brothers and Duck Hunt.
True.
And, I mean, the NES was pretty darn successful. So I wonder what happened in the interim for them to have this kind of attitude towards things. Like, why is it that suddenly they decided, hey, we probably shouldn't be giving this away for free, when realistically, like you said, especially for a console that had this new gimmick, like the use of motion controls was something that was pretty much completely untested when it came to major video game platforms. Actually bundling a game that showed you how exactly everything could work was a very good idea. And it's odd, especially after seeing this success with Wii Sports, how they've kind of avoided that in some ways with future iterations. Like, the Wii U did come with an edition that bundled Nintendo Land, which is a fantastic game and a good, probably the best use on the system of the asymmetric gameplay that the gamepad provides. And even then, that was a separate edition that you had to specifically buy for Nintendo Land. And then the Switch had 1-2 Switch, and that wasn't bundled in any way. Like, you had to buy that separately for $60, and that was heavily criticized because that game just isn't really worth a purchase by itself. If it had been bundled with the console the way that Wii Sports had, that really would not have been a problem.
Yeah, no, it's... Yeah, and I really think it's interesting that you bring up that point, Nicholas, of how, like, their attitude towards bundling games and adding in this extra content, like, it really has changed. And something that sticks out to me nowadays, on top of what you mentioned, is, like, they put out demos for pretty much all of their games nowadays, which is not something they used to do, you know? So it is fascinating to just kind of look and just see how everything has changed. Kind of on a similar line of thinking, one of the things that really surprised me was that Reggie, apparently, according to his book, he was pushing for the 3DS to launch at a lower cost. It launched here in the United States at least at about $250, which is, a lot of money. It was even more at the time. And he wanted it to launch cheaper. And so it's clearly it didn't, right? And the 3DS had kind of a rockier sales start than Nintendo had hoped for at the time, which did lead them to eventually drop the price. But it's interesting to me that he was pushing for this console to cost less than it did.
Yeah. Like you said, it kind of seems in line with the Wii Sports decision where, not to say that NOA doesn't care about their products, but Nintendo of Japan really seems to want to put a lot of emphasis on what they're producing as being high quality, like, premium products. And so there's that hesitation of them to, give these games away bundled or lower the price on something that they consider to be of a high enough value.
Yeah, it's, and I think, I think they've definitely learned their lesson nowadays. I mean, especially on the hardware front too, like, they have the lower cost option with the Switch Lite, and I think they've started to realize that, like, hey, like, they went back and they looked at the Wii days and they're like, hey, if we want to get in this casual market, these casual consumers, this is what we have to do to draw them in, and it seems like it's working so far.
It's funny because I'm going to say something that Dennis would probably say. I'm not sure if they actually learned their lesson, because One Two Switch should have come bundled with Switch. And I think that it's like the same thing. They don't want to give a game for free. I think it's, again, that same mentality. It's funny to talk about the difference between culture when we talk about pricing, because if I'm not mistaken, games in Japan, they have like largely different prices. For example, Xenoblade is really expensive in Japan. It's not the AAA normal price, It's like a different price because it's a huge RPG, and then there are other games which are cheaper. And here in the US, most of the time we have the $6, which is the fixed price. And I think in Japan there's this different culture of different games going for different prices. It's quite interesting to see.
Yeah, that is very true. I actually, way back when I was in high school, I went to Japan, and we went to some of the game stores, and I was struck by how much more expensive they were just for like normal releases. A lot of games that come out in Japan nowadays, they cost the equivalent of like usually 80 or 90 US dollars, which is a pretty big markup. But so I guess Nintendo still isn't consistent about their pricing for their games or their hardware. But Nicholas, what was your most interesting tidbit?
Well, I think one thing of note that Reggie talked about, which a lot of people would care about, is he mentioned Mother 3, this little game that has been brought up in the news, specifically related to Reggie a few times. It was just High talking about why the game never released here, which is a very hotly debated topic. Mentioning the game, he wasn't there around the GBA release of the game, so for the initial release, they didn't really have... He hadn't had too much input on it, but he did mention that at the time, Nintendo was focused on the DS and business opportunities for the DS, things like Metroid Hunters, Mario Kart, Pokemon. So it might not have made sense to release Mother 3 at that point, especially because the original game wasn't received incredibly well. It had a bit of an odd marketing and whatnot. He does go on to talk about why it never saw a digital re-release, which is what a lot of people expected, or maybe more wanted, when we got to the 3DS and Wii U era. It's interesting. He mentions that production costs might have been too high for what they wanted. They didn't want to invest too much money into trying to make this happen. Which is an interesting thing in the first place, because localization for the game was offered to be done by... There's a really popular fan translation for it. I think it's... I don't remember who made it. But it's been pretty much recognized as being extremely faithful and authentic, and it's been offered to be used... the creator offered it to be used by Nintendo for free, because they just want to see the game released in some fashion. So technically they could have used that if they really wanted to and cut costs on that, but they just kind of avoided it. He mentions that they might have had a plan to release the original Japanese game in Japanese in the West, which just to keep costs down, which would have been a very, very odd decision.
Yeah.
Yeah, would have kept the costs down, that's for sure, but it wouldn't have got them much.
Yeah. Eventually, apparently, this whole thought process and this debate led to Earthbound Beginnings being made available on the Wii U instead of Mother 3. So still some kind of win, even if it's not the one that most people were wanting. And eventually Mother 3 just never made it over. It was also interesting, though, that he mentioned specifically a lot of people have, they theorized on why Mother 3 never made it over. Being that we're just, players of the game, we don't know what's going on inside their heads. Why is it that these games never come over? And so a big popular theory was just that the game had several themes and elements of its writing that they just didn't really want to represent anymore. The game had some fairly strong anti-capitalist criticism. It also had a set of characters that were kind of coded to be trans, but also not really treated super respectfully, at least not by today's standards. And elements like that people kind
problematic representation in general.
Exactly. Elements like that, people were kind of like, this could be why they maybe just don't want to deal with this, whatever. And apparently that's not the case. Apparently that was never an issue why Mother 3 never made it to the West. It was just purely a business decision based on what they wanted to put on the platform.
Yeah, I think there's something interesting in what Reggie said, that he said maybe if Wii U was more successful, we would saw Mother 3 because we received Earthbound and of course Earthbound Beginnings. So maybe if Wii U had a couple more years, we would eventually receive Mother 3. From what I gather, I think it's a matter of time that Mother 3 will be released, if what Reggie is saying is true. Because I think they are not releasing right now because Switch does not have a GBA emulator for us at the moment. But I think as soon as GBA emulation is available via Nintendo Switch Online, it's a matter of time for us to receive Mother 3. I don't know if they will ask for a price like they did with the first Fire Emblem, like with that special edition, or if it will be available on Nintendo Switch Online. But I think it's like, for me, from what he's saying, it feels like the game was always at the wrong time and in the wrong moment, so it never made sense to actually localize for them. So I'm being optimist, but from what he's saying, if all of this is true, I think that's what makes more sense.
Yeah, I mean, it's at least good to know that they did at least talk about it. Like, it's not like Nintendo was like, it's not like the fans' cries for this game were falling on deaf ears.
Yeah, just burying their head in the sand.
Yeah, at least they're aware and at least they considered it. I mean, I really don't think the excuse of, we didn't want to invest a lot of money in it makes a ton of sense. I mean, maybe they just weren't expecting it to sell very well, but I mean, how much does it really cost to hire a couple good translators and have them translate
it's a full RPG, but like,
I think
it's hard.
Because localization, Nintendo is very picky with localization. I think they actually invest a lot in the department, and maybe that was the whole reason. I know that because in Brazil we have this fight of having games in Portuguese for more than 20, 30 years. So the answer that Nintendo representatives in Brazil always say to us is very similar to what Reggie said, that localization is very expensive and they are not sure if they will make enough money in Brazil, in this case, for this game. So I think it has kind of this business decision, but I'm pretty sure that Mother 3 has enough demand for a localization.
At this point, yeah. And I think it's probably just going to keep growing now, especially now that people can more easily play the first two games. I mean, I think I want to say that it's going to happen eventually. But yeah, Louise, like you said, knowing our luck, they're going to release it as like one of the, like what they did with that Fire Emblem game. It's going to be,
probably,
we're going to sell this for like 2 months. And we're locking it back in the
have
vault.
2 hours to buy the game. Run!
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, hopefully, since we haven't seen anything in that style from Nintendo since the release of Fire Emblem and 3D All Stars, hopefully they realize that everyone hated that.
I hope so. Yeah.
We did also
I
talk
wouldn't put it past 'em.
a couple weeks back about GBA emulator being potentially leaked for Switch, so there's a chance of Mother 3 coming through that maybe.
Yeah. I'm hopeful.
Yeah, I think hope is all we can have at this point. Well, on top of all that exciting Nintendo revelations, I think we can safely call them, and there was another big headline that came out. Of course, like the day after we record the podcast, we talked all about Square Enix. We were talking all about their games. And of course, it's the day after we talk about it that they decide to release this crazy industry important news. It's just our luck. But yeah, Square Enix announced that they are going to be selling off some of their Western studios to a giant conglomerate called Embracer Group. And now for those who aren't familiar, Embracer Group is it's like the Kirby of the video game industry. It just kind of sucks up all these studios.
Best analogy ever.
Thank you. And Embracer Group, they own 100 studios at this point. I'm not exaggerating. They own
huge.
Yeah, they own Gearbox, and I think they own THQ.
THQ Nordic.
Yeah, so it's a big list. And Square Enix said they're going to be selling off some of their Western studios. Not everything, but they're selling off Crystal Dynamics, Eidos, Square Enix Montreal, and perhaps more importantly, they're selling off a lot of their IP. So Square Enix is not going to own Tomb Raider. They're not going to own Deus Ex or Thief. Gex, for all you Gex fans out there. And it's big news. I guess the question is always how is this going to affect, everyone who's playing games on the Switch? I don't know. Nicholas, what do you think? Do you think this is something that's going to have good implications for fans of Square Enix games on Switch? Maybe not.
Well, it's an odd case because, for Switch fans specifically, I don't think Crystal Dynamics has really released anything on Switch, so that probably won't affect things much. Eidos has had a few releases. I'm not sure if they've been super prolific, but at the very least, Guardians of the Galaxy did come out as a cloud version for Switch. The question is how much of that was a mandate from Square Enix versus an actual decision by the devs. Because if it was the former, then it's likely we're probably not going to see much more from Eidos on Switch.
Right.
And I honestly am not 100% sure what Square Enix Montreal has put out, so I can't super comment on that, but in general, this is a very interesting case, for a few different reasons. For one, this is, Square Enix, you're right in saying that this isn't all of their Western studios that they are letting go of, but this is a lot of them. These are big studios, and these are really big IPs that they're just kind of dropping. And not even for that much. They're dropping, these 3 studios, which I think is 1,100 employees, and over 50 of their IPs, which, like you said, some pretty big ones, things like Tomb Raider and Deus Ex, for just $300 million. And if we remember from a few months ago when Microsoft ended up buying, it was announced that Microsoft was buying Activision Blizzard, or when PlayStation was buying Bungie, those deals were in the billions. It was significantly more money than what Square Enix is letting go of, or than what Square Enix is touching just for these studios and their IPs, which are really quite big and quite popular. And
when you think of, but that said, when you think of most of what we've gotten on the Switch, it's been a lot of Final Fantasy. It's been a lot of games coming over from their Japanese studios. I mean, we just got Chrono Cross. We get a lot of RPGs from them on the Switch.
They got Triangle Strategy too.
Yeah, Triangle Strategy. Yeah, and later this year they have they announced a game recently that's the Diofield Chronicle, which is also kind of I always forget about that one. But so there's a lot of games from their Japanese studios coming. But yeah, you're right. We haven't gotten much from their Western studios. I do remember on the Wii U, they had a special port of Deus Ex Human Revolution for the Wii U. which apparently is like the best way to play that game. But yeah, it is a lot of IP that's shifting hands. But I almost wonder, like, because one of the tidbits that came out from this report was Square Enix, part of the reason why they're doing this, they want to invest more in blockchain and NFTs. Like, that's where they want... Yeah, that's where they want their business to go. And so maybe they had been deprioritizing some of these franchises for a while, and maybe if Embracer Group is buying these studios and just saying, hey, go out, make the games you want to make, put them where you want, then maybe we'll see some of these games on Switch. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, that's really the one thing to hope from this, is just that the studios are better off for it. Like, Crystal Dynamics has not been putting out that much. Eidos Montreal, in particular, has been a really tragic story. Like, they had to release... they were commissioned by Square to make the Avengers game, which was a complete flop, and they didn't have any experience with live service games, and they were kind of... They had their hand forced by Square to kind of do this, which... really sucks for the studio. And then even after that, when they made Guardians of the Galaxy, which was very much a quality game, that stigma of having made Avengers still kind of hung over their head, and that game ended up kind of flopping as well. So hopefully this change in ownership is going to, if nothing else, it will help those studios in some way. They'll be able to produce quality products and not be under such stress from upper management. So
yeah, I have the same hope. Square Enix is one of those companies that sometimes we simply can't understand. Like Nintendo sometimes, to be honest, but I think Square, the bad decisions that Square makes are a little worse. Oh, yeah, were you going to say something, Nick?
Oh, no, yeah, I was just going to say, I mean, I personally, I don't really feel like we're going to see any immediate implications on this. I do think Square Enix has pretty much, they brought over all the Final Fantasy games at this point. Like, I don't think there's much left for them to port. So, and I guess it is important to say, they are keeping some of their Western studios. Like, they're still going to be publishing, like, the Life is Strange games. That was something they put on Switch.
I was curious about that. Yeah. Yep. Oh, all right. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So maybe we'll, and they also had this other program. Sorry, I'm just thinking out loud at this point. But for a while, Square Enix had this program where basically it was almost like a Kickstarter for indies, but like for Square Enix games. It was called Square Enix Collective. And
I think I remember, yeah.
Yeah, and they funded quite a few indie games through that program. And from what I heard, like, it's still going on in some capacity, so maybe we'll still get some small games from them. Mm-hmm. Louise, what do you think? Do you think we're got anything to worry about over here in the Nintendo world?
Yeah, I don't think so. As we've discussed in the last podcast, I think those studios were already being kind of neglected by Square. We could clearly see that they were not receiving, they were not putting out with the same quality of other Square Enix studios from Japan, and it really seems that Square is just basically giving those studios because they don't want to deal with those IPs anymore, and using that money on NFTs and Bitcoins and whatever, which is something that does not sound very good, but at least I hope that Square Enix will still work with their IPs like Kingdom Hearts, Final Fantasy, Dragon Quest. I hope those games will be completely unaffected by this politics of being like NFTs and Bitcoins. Can you imagine starting to play Final Fantasy and you buying NFTs and stuff like that? I really hope they don't mix things with their games. But we don't know.
Hey, you know what? As long as they don't pull a Konami and just decide to start making pachinko machines and that's it. As long as they don't do that, I'll be okay. But
it is worth mentioning, these are just rumors, obviously, but there are rumors that part of this could be Square preparing to sell and them just trying to offload what they consider to be some of their extraneous studios. And that's part of why they're just kind of letting them go for so little, is because they want to try and reduce the overall size to make an acquisition more feasible for an external studio or company.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
Microsoft already tried, I think, so.
Yeah, I mean, Sony's probably the one best positioned to do that if anyone's going to do it, but
they have a very close relationship. Yeah.
That's true. But yeah, but then again, when you think of all like the Nintendo exclusive stuff that Square Enix has put out over however long, like between like Bravely Default series and Triangle Strategy, it's mostly those those RPGs. But yeah,
usually the products from Team Asano are going go to Nintendo, like Triangle Strategy, Octopath Traveler, Bravely Default. Those games are usually Nintendo exclusive, at least temporarily.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I guess time will tell. But fortunately, you know, even if we don't get anything from Square Enix for a while, we do got another game coming up in the pipeline pretty soon. It is Mario Strikers, the new Mario Strikers game. And this is something that a lot of people are excited for. It's been a long time since we've gotten a new Mario Strikers game on the Switch. And we haven't really heard much about it since it was revealed back in the Nintendo Direct. But just this past week, we did get some Japanese gameplay footage via a new trailer from Nintendo. And Louise, you were pretty excited about this. What were your takeaways from this trailer?
Yeah, so I'm quite excited. I'm a big fan of the series. I played a lot of Mario Striker Charge on the Wii. I always found this series a little weird because like soccer is a really popular sport, but not in the US. Like in the rest of the world it's really big, but in the US, as far as I know, it's not that big. So I was really curious when I saw it for the first time, because like soccer is like the most popular sport in Brazil by far. It's like part of our culture and all of that. So I was really interested to see how would be Mario's take on that. And then when I started to play Mario Striker Charge, it has almost nothing to do with football. It's a crazy, crazy sport where people are fighting each other all the time. It's very, very violent. And I'm happy to see that with this new game, they are maintaining that vibe. Like it still looks really violent and all of that. But seeing from this trailer, we can see that things are a little bit different. From the first trailer, we could already see some of that, but the game is going on the route of being a little more colorful and not so much with the steampunk look of the past games. So it has a more by the numbers Mario look, which I don't like that much, but I'm okay with it, and it still looks great. But
you think so? Oh wait, I'm so curious. So you think it doesn't look? I mean, I didn't play the original one on the Wii, but I mean, when I look at this game compared to some of the other Mario games we've gotten lately, to me, it's got a totally different like tone.
Oh yeah.
Theme. And...
When you compare it to the Camelot games like golf and tennis, it definitely it still is way more crazy than those games. But Mario Strikers Charge was on another level.
Yeah.
Like it looks like the whole filter of the look was really dark, and you have all those post-apocalyptic places in the stadiums. It was really, really crazy. It kind of takes place in a distant future. So it's like a whole different culture that the game created to make this sport make sense.
Yeah.
So go on, Nicholas.
I was just say the opening for Mario Strikers Charged is has a bunch of people in the stadium just rushing to the field and getting electrocuted. It is extremely chaotic.
I do remember that.
And some of the when someone scores a goal, some of the characters have some crazy animations, some really edgy animations.
Like
if you look out
Waluigi
for
does a hip thrust, it's
yeah.
that I saw that meme circulating not too long ago.
So it was really a really fun, really creative game, and I think a part of that is because Next Level Games is a studio that they are really good with animations. They make their games are really comedic. They are really fun. They are really well made, like Luigi's Mansion, for example. So I really like Next Level Games as a developer. And in this new game, I can see the Next Level Games charm. I can see that the animations are really cool, that the game is looking fun, and you have all those different gears. So it is looking very nice to me. But I have two problems at the moment. The first problem are the stadiums. So all the stadiums, you can change how they look around the stadium. You can change all the where the people are on the stadium, all the space around it. But you can't change the actual ground. It's always the grassy ground from classic soccer. So it looks a little bland when we compare it to Mario Strikers Charge, where there was those crazy places with crazy hazards in the stadium. So we don't have that anymore. And also the roster. It seems that the roster is complete by the select screen, so we have only 10 characters. And characters like Daisy, for example. Daisy is one of my favorite characters in Mario spin-offs, and she is not here. So my guess is that they are going for the classic approach of free updates that we saw with recent Nintendo games like Mario Golf, Mario Tennis, and Switch Sports. So again, we are receiving a game that is not complete, but it eventually will be. So yeah, I'm not a fan of that, and it seems that it has arrived also in Mario Strikers. But I'm excited, really. I'm excited for the game, just a little bumped by all those other extra elements.
So you don't think, I mean, I do think you're right about the characters, because yeah, it did look like that was pretty much all the characters for now, and yeah, they could probably add more down the road. But I do wonder if maybe for the stadiums, I mean, maybe they're just not showing them all right now. I wouldn't put it past Nintendo to only put out like one course in a game, because it's not the first time they've done it in a sports game.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Something like this that has so much energy and so much creativity, like it would be a huge missed opportunity if they didn't launch the game with at least a couple places to play violent soccer.
I mean, the structure of the game kind of seems like it's just, you have these basic fields and the only thing you customize about them is, like, the visuals of your half, but not the mechanics themselves, which was such, like Louis said, it was such a huge thing of the past game. You had stages like quicksand, you had a lava stage with, I think, meteorites falling down from the sky. There was one in particular which was, like, on a super stormy cliff where there were no edges to the stage and you could just fall off. And a tornado
and there was a cow
like,
flying.
Yeah, these super creative stages that actually changed the layout of the arena and whatnot, and like removed barriers or whatever. And not having that in the game, or at least seemingly not having that in the game, is a real shame. It really makes me hope that they're still able to maintain some of that Mario Strikers charged, or some of that Mario Strikers charm. Because that was just such a unique part of the past games in the series. And it's something that, like Louise said, Next Level Games had always been very good at. And I would hate to see them kind of go the way of Camelot in that regard, where the games that they put out are just very, very standard.
Yeah, I think talking in a more positive note, I think the game looks very interesting in the gameplay department because they are bringing a lot of new stuff. Like, you have a lot of options for gear, so you can create characters with totally different stats, like more speed, more something that we didn't have in the first game, and I think the series really needed it because the first Mario Striker Charge is a lot of fun, but it's not a very deep experience. Like, it's a very casual game, and I think this can make the online experience more interesting. And beyond that, they have some new mechanics. There's this one where the character push the other to go faster or to reach someone else. So it's really in the gameplay department. I'm happy with what I'm seeing so far. Of course, I will only know when I actually play the game, but it looks like Next Level Games putting a lot of effort in the game. It doesn't. I saw some people saying that this could be the Mario Tennis Ultra Smash. I don't think it's even close to that with what we saw so far.
No,
I can understand what they are saying, but it's not at that level. But yeah, I'm kind of mixed. I'm at the same time super excited, but I have those small issues.
Yeah, at the end we kind of just have to wait and see. I mean, this whole customization armor system in general could be their kind of answer to the smaller roster. Like, hey, you only have 10 characters, but you have a super high degree of customization with them, so like you can kind of balance it out. It's hard to say. And in general, like, I just really hope that like, I think it's a little early to say that the game isn't complete. It might very well end up ending that way if they end up choosing to release a whole bunch of content post-launch. I'm still hoping that It will have enough of a single player offering for me to stay entertained, because that's something that I really enjoy in a lot of these, like, even in these games that are focused on multiplayer, things like Splatoon or whatnot. If they have a strong single player offering, that will massively increase my investment in the game, even my investment into playing the game's multiplayer long term. And I really hope that Mario Strikers doesn't have that same degree of single player that games like Tennis Aces or Super Rush had, where it's like kind of bare bones. I hope it will have a bit more.
Yeah, I'm not optimistic. I mean, look, some people are thrilled that, like, it's like you can get one thing from Nintendo, not the other, right? Like, for years and years, everyone was saying, oh, put online play in your game. And then they did, and now there's online play in all these sports games, but not a lot of single-player content. It's like we, like, lost that to get the online play. So, yeah, I don't know, but, you know, the game comes out in a month, so it won't be long before I think we know pretty much everything to come out about this game. June 10th, so right around the corner. All right, well, we got one more news topic to get to in this episode, and then we got our fun mystery bonus conversation topic after that, so stay tuned. So this is, you know, probably not a huge surprise, but so there's this organization. They are called the Video Game World Hall of Fame. Pretty self-explanatory. They're like the archive and kind of put in their museum like the most, maybe not like the best video games ever necessarily, right? But the ones that have been very important in terms of the history of the industry as a whole. And it was just announced last week that one of the games that is getting added in this year's round is The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time for the Nintendo 64. And I think this is, you know, a pretty solid choice. I think Super Mario 64 is already in there, so might as well bring in the next iconic 3D historic Nintendo game. It's joining alongside Dance Dance Revolution and Sid Meier's Civilization and Miss Pac-Man. Those are some of the games that are being added this time around. So pretty solid company.
Yeah, I mean, go ahead, Louise.
No, it's. I would say that it's. I would be interested to know the criteria to get those games in. I'm not sure if it is like the historical relevance, if it is the actual quality of the game. I mean, probably all of those combined, right? Because it's something of a historic place. I mean, it's an obvious choice. Ocarina of Time is like a fantastic game, and it probably created the whole model of action adventure that we still see in the majority of games today. I mean, even more experiences like games like God of War, like from other companies, they are heavily inspired by Zelda. And I think Ocarina of Time plays a big part of that. It was particularly, to me, Ocarina of Time was the game that actually made me a Nintendo fan, because I always enjoy video games and all of that, but there was this time that a friend of mine said, and I think the only Nintendo game that I ever played was Super Mario World, which was like, you had to play Super Mario World. But I got the opportunity to play Ocarina of Time from beginning to end, and I was like, I would blow my mind. Like, I didn't know that a video game could be like that, could be so impactful, could be so amazing from beginning to end. So yeah, I think it's an obvious and necessary choice.
Well, to answer your question, Louise, about what are the criteria, I just did a little bit of armchair keyboard research for you. And here are the 4 criteria that are required to become eligible for the World Video Game Hall of Fame. So, first one is icon status, which they say is being widely recognized and remembered, which I think this game definitely fits. Longevity, so the game has to be more than a passing fad and has to be popular over a long period of time. Geographical reach is the third one, so it has to be, you know, meet all the criteria like everywhere. It has to be available across different countries, not just in one place. And then influence, I think this is the big one for this game, has exerted significant influence on the design and development of other games or other forms of entertainment or in popular culture in general. So those are the criteria that not Breath of the Wild,
Not yet.
Ocarina of Time had to, not yet. Maybe in like 30 years. Who knows?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, it's interesting. I think that makes a lot of sense. Ocarina of Time easily meets all of those criteria, and I think a lot of Nintendo games will still be added because I saw the list and I think some iconic games are still missing from the list. But I think they are slowly adding because video games kind of a new media. I mean, compared to others, and we are still creating the history of video games.
Yeah, it'll be really interesting. Who knows what types of games will be being entered in 20, 30 years from now, you know?
Yeah. I mean, for the record, the other list of finalists, I think, for this, other than the four you mentioned, the ones considered were Assassin's Creed, Candy Crush Saga, Minesweeper, NBA Jam, Parappa the Rapper, Resident Evil, Rogue, and Words with Friends. So there's definitely some interesting choices there. Maybe some that most people would consider unconventional, where it's very much like, hey, even if these games aren't necessarily the top 100 most quality games ever, they have a lot of influence and reach, and that's what matters.
Right.
I kind of like how it does not feel like a gamer list.
This is
like,
true, yeah.
It feels like a very broad list of what video games is, because there are some people that you ask and if mobile games are games, and they will say, no, this is not a game experience. And of course it is. So I kind of like how it is very broad.
Yeah. I'm looking through the list of other games that have gotten in. And to your point, Louise, like Bejeweled. Everyone knows about Bejeweled, right? It's like a classic puzzle game. That's in there, right? So, yeah, it's cool that like they're saying, hey, you know, this Zelda game has had like the level of impact we think on par with some of these other games. I think that's really cool.
Yeah.
All right. Well, those are all the news topics for today. So now we can move on to our special bonus segment. I would give you a drum roll, but I don't have a drum with me, so you'll just have to imagine it in your head. So our special bonus segment for this week is, what is your quintessential summer game? Now, I know that sounds kind of vague, so let me explain. What is the game that either, you know, brings back like these pictures of summer? You know, maybe it was a game that you like played during your summer vacation while you were a kid, or maybe it's a game that just is like, you know, just has summer vibes, you know, takes place, you know, during like that childhood nostalgia memory period where it's just like everything just about it screams summer. So those are the categories. Those are what we're talking about. So I have one in mind, but Nicholas, do you want to start? Do you have one at the top of your head?
Sure. It's going to be a bit of an odd start, though, because I think neither of the games I'm thinking of are exactly conventional summer games.
All right. Well, that makes it interesting.
I suppose so. But yeah, so I think for me, the big thing of summer was, you know, summer break. I'm a very stay-at-home person, and I love just having the time to sit down and just kind of grind through all the games that you have on your backlog that you recently got and were playing. And for me, a lot of that means basically big RPGs and other similar experiences that would take a lot of time.
Well, I never would have guessed. Really?
It's shocking considering what I've been playing, yes. But yeah, the two that kind of stand out to me as being like these big summer experiences are Monster Hunter 3 Ultimate, specifically I guess on the Wii U because that's why I played it the most on, and Xenoblade Chronicles. And the first, I guess, is technically more summer themed because it has kind of like an ocean theme. You live in a town by the ocean. But really, that was just a case where for like 2 months, I can just sit down and just keep hunting monsters over and over again, build up my gear, just have tons of fun really getting invested into the game, into the world and whatnot. And it's a super fun memory of mine, just spending all that time hunting stuff, slowly getting my gear better, hunting more stuff, etc. It's just a really fun loop. The other is Xenoblade Chronicles, which is just had a huge impact on me because it was one of the first big RPGs I'd ever played, and in general just had really showed me a lot more of what games could do as like an art form, media in terms of storytelling, in terms of visuals, in terms of music, etc. And that game I played a lot during the summer of 2014. So that's another huge experience where it just I have this huge 100-hour RPG and I have all this time to just devote to it and just sit down and just work my way through it. And that was a very, very fond memory. Just that one summer of 2014, and I guess a little bit of the fall afterwards, kind of going through this entire game and experiencing this whole story for myself.
I love it. No, I think that... See, look, you were counting yourself out before we even got to hear what you had to say. But yeah, no, I think that's great. RPGs are like, especially if you're a kid and you have the time to sit down and like really sink a bunch of hours. And I wish I was an RPG fan when I was younger, because that would have been the perfect time to get through some of these games. And now I'm like, oh gosh, I'm never going to have the time for this.
I wish the same, yeah.
What about you, Louise? What comes to your head when you think the quintessential summer video game?
So I will proceed by saying that where I live, we don't have the climate seasons. We don't have summer. If anything, I would say that every day is summer, like from beginning to the end of the year, because we are very close to the line of equator. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about, the line at the center of the world. So
it's always summer in Brazil, is what you're saying.
Yeah, it's always summer, more or less. But I have school vacation in July, so I can relate some games to that feeling. And I have two examples also. I think one from really my youth. It's not when I was really young. It's not a Nintendo game because I wasn't a Nintendo fan when I was a kid. It was Crash Bandicoot on the PS1 because I had a PS1. The first and the second one was both the ones that I really played a lot. And I think those games have a summer vibe. They have kind of that whole vibe of being really fun, too cartoonish game. And I remember that when I was a kid, those games are really like short. I mean, I think they are 5 hours experience, but I couldn't finish when I was a kid. So I kept trying, and they felt to me like a huge JRPG for that time because they really took my time when I was younger. And replaying them nowadays with the trilogy remaster, yeah, those games were really hard. Even playing today, I think sometimes it is quite unfair, to be honest. So it's that kind of game that it is really hard. Also, other example more recently, when I bought my Wii, was Mario Galaxy. It was one after I played Ocarina of Time. It was around 2009, 2010. I immediately bought a Wii, and the first game that I bought to my Wii, besides Mario Kart, Wii Sports, and that stuff, was the first Mario Galaxy. And again, I was blown away by that game, and I remember playing it in the school vacation, and just having the time of my life with that experience. Really the whole setting of the game, how magical. I have this feeling of being a really magical moments of my life playing that game. So just a lot of good memories with the first Mario Galaxy. Then I played the second one, also fantastic game, but most of my memories of playing that game in my free time was with the first one. Yeah,
that's really cool to hear you say, because I have similar feelings about Mario Galaxy, specifically the second one. This wasn't the game I was going to talk about, but since you brought it up, I remember when I was a kid, I was at summer camp one year, and I had got my issue of my mom. She was awesome. She mailed me my copy of Nintendo Power magazine from my house to summer camp, so I could read it while I was at camp. And amazing. Right on the cover was Super Mario Galaxy 2, and I was just blown away, and I was so excited. And the moment I got back from camp, I went and bought it. My timing might be a little confused here because I think it was actually announced like a year or so before it came out. But I remember getting it, like it came out in May, and I got it and I played through it during the summer vacation. And yeah, just like you, Louise, there's something about that game that it's just like you're a kid just flying around in space and just the music and everything. It's just the perfect game to sink into when you're a kid. Yeah, that's awesome. So, but my pick for the game, other than the one I just raved about, for me, so I live in Arizona, and it is really freaking hot here in the summer. Like, so hot, like you know, kids other places, you get to go outside, you get to play around, you get to whatever. Can't really do that in Arizona unless you're going for a swim, right? So, so I spent a lot of my summers indoors, and the game that I used to escape a lot as a kid was Animal Crossing. because I was able to go, and it obviously is not the same as actually playing outside, but you know, you get to roam around this, like, I always thought, I was like, wow, like, it's such a big game world, like, there's so much to do, like, as a kid, like, when you look back on it now, it's like this small little island, but as a kid, like, I never got tired of running around and collecting seashells on the beach and catching fish and bugs, like, things that I just couldn't really do with where I was growing up. So that was the game that I could really just kind of sink into as a kid and feel like I was living my summer vacation, you know?
That's
I think
awesome.
that's the perfect game for that occasion.
Yeah.
Yeah, so lots of good memories with that. And
You had some...
even as
you had some early
go ahead,
experience
Nicholas.
with the pandemic. Just guys staying
Yeah.
at home.
I was just gonna say, like, it was kind of a repeat when the new Animal Crossing came out, and I was stuck inside all summer, and I was like, oh, I'm an adult now, but I'm gonna do the exact same thing, and just, whatever, go collect fossils or whatever. But all right, well, thank you guys for sharing. It's always cool to hear about people's memories growing up in the games that were impactful to them, and yeah, it's getting warm again, so everyone boot up your favorite summer game, have some. Let the nostalgia flow for a little bit. All right, well, that just about wraps up our show, but we got one more topic to go through. And as always, as we like to close out every show, it's just, what has everyone been playing lately? Louise, you want to start this time?
Oh, of course. So I'll blame that on Nicholas, but right now I'm playing Xenoblade 2.
Oh, no.
Because after
cycle
hearing from...
continues.
Of course, not only because of Nicholas, but because I'm also really hyped for Xenoblade 3. I decided to continue a save that I had on the game. That's probably my third or fourth save, I'm not 100% sure. And start playing it again. I think I'm on chapter 5, the game has 10 chapters. And I'm not very interested in the main story, but I'm trying to do all the side quests, all the side missions, and there's a lot to do, like a lot. So I'm right now. It's something that I'm really interested. Not only because I love Xenoblade, but because it's something that I can do without paying too much attention. So sometimes I'm doing something or listen to a podcast and Switch is by my sides, and I'm usually just playing, make some quests or putting the game to make some merc missions, which are missions that you can just play and the game does it on its own. So yeah, it's been fun so far. I don't know how far I'll actually go. I think I can't 100% that game because it's so big that I can't even imagine. But I'm hoping to do a lot, and that's what I've been doing this week.
Do you think you'll get through the main story by the time Xenoblade 3 comes out?
Oh yes, I think so, probably, because I'm not advancing too much on the main story because sometimes something in the story happens that affects the main party. So a character gets kidnapped, so you can't use that character, or something in the story happens that I have to progress to actually get to the point where I can make the side quests and everything else. So most of the time I'm just progressing when I really have to do it.
Yeah, it's, I love how you said you kind of listen to a podcast while you play that game, because I've heard it's like got a lot of like side quests and stuff that are pretty grindy, but when you look at a game that massive, like my first thought is like, man, like I would want to be so immersed in everything that's going on. Like I'm like not the type of person to usually listen to a podcast or music while I play games, but I guess when something is that long, you might have to have something else going on.
Yeah.
I mean, I think I just do that for like Animal Crossing, Tetris, or a game that I'm replaying. But usually I like to be connected to the experience on the TV and everything else.
Got it. Well, what about you, Nicholas? You said you're done with Xenoblade 2, so you can't use that as an excuse anymore.
No. No, I can use another RPG as an excuse, though, which is Octopath. So I mentioned... Yeah, I mentioned that I was probably going to start Octopath Traveler, and I have. And I guess it's not so much start as restart, because I already put, I think, roughly 20 hours into the game when it had originally released. I ended up stopping because I'm not entirely sure why. It was probably something along the lines of there was another game that came out that caught my interest or something. But I have restarted. It feels really nice getting some of the rust off. just relearning all the systems and whatnot. And in a way, it's kind of seems a bit odd because it's another huge RPG, but it's almost refreshing to play it after Xenoblade just because the turn-based combat is very different. And it's a fun, different experience in that regard.
It's more simplified combat-wise, right? Like, I understand Xenoblade's combat is very involved.
Yeah, in a way, it's nice to kind of have... it's, like, relaxing to have your turn-based combat where you can really just... You can sit on a turn for, like, 5 minutes, maybe think about what you're gonna do, someone calls you, so you run off to do something else, and then you come back. Like, it's kind of more casual in that regard, as odd as it seems for, like, a 100-hour RPG. But, yeah, really fun game. I love the HD 2D visuals. I can't wait to get more of that. Pretty excited for Live Alive, even if I probably won't be able to devote much time to it, because it comes out, like, the same day as Xenoblade 3, a week before?
Almost the same day, yeah. Terrible decision, yeah.
But in the meantime, really excited to play through Octopath.
Awesome. Yeah, no, that's another one of those backlog games, man. I'm telling you, I love these RPGs. I can't find the time for them, but one of these days I'm going to get to it. Maybe now that it's on Game Pass, maybe that'll be my impetus to finally go and play that game.
Yeah.
It's definitely worth it.
Yeah, all right. Well, you can hold me accountable that one of these days on this podcast I will play it and I will talk about it.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, so for me, I have not been playing any massive RPGs just yet.
Shame.
But I do have... So I have a Oculus Quest. Or now it's the Meta Quest. And every now and then I'll pop back into Beat Saber for a little bit. And this week I was very excited because they announced there's like a new music pack that has a bunch of tracks from a bunch of EDM artists that I like. Some pretty big ones. Like Martin Garrix has a song in there, and Deadmau5, he has a song in there, and I don't know if you guys are super familiar, but like there's some exciting stuff in that music pack, and so and it's just crazy, man. Do you guys play a lot of VR games?
No, but I hear that Beat Saber is one of the most impressive ones to play. I always wanted to play, but I never played it.
Oh
yeah,
man,
I've only tried VR once, so I can't speak too much, but same. Beat Saber just has such an amazing reputation. It's definitely like one of, if not the VR game that is probably praised and talked about the most.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is, as you know, I think it's one of the games that's going to end up in the Video Game World Hall of Fame at some point because it is just like that quintessential VR game. But yeah, it's just, man, like playing through that game in a VR headset, it's something I feel like you've got to experience because you feel like with the way they coordinate like the lights and you put on a good pair of headphones and you feel like you're at like a concert or you feel like you're in the middle of a stage with everything going on around you. It's so immersive. And for people who love rhythm games and music, I can't recommend it enough. Especially with the rate that they're adding new songs. It's like pretty much every month or two. You have to pay for a lot of it, but there's a lot of big artists who have songs now in Beat Saber. So there's definitely something for everyone, I think.
Something that I always wanted to ask for someone who plays Beat Saber. Every time that I see a gameplay of someone playing it, it looks so hard. I don't know if it is because I'm not very good with rhythm games, but if you compare it with something like Rock Band or Guitar Hero, it is it really demands a lot of coordination, or when you are actually you can get the feel after a while, how it is, the experience, how hard it is.
Well, I think like if you look at people on YouTube, right? Like everyone wants to show off. So you'll see people on YouTube playing on like the hardest difficulty mode. Like
yeah.
Everything turned up to like 3 times speed, and I don't do any of that. I play on like I play on like normal difficulty. It's still a good challenge, I'd say. Like you do have to like a lot of times you have to like kind of dodge obstacles. You might have to squat down to duck underneath like a wall that's coming towards you, and but when you're looking at it in 3D and you feel like it's all actually in front of you, I feel like your reflexes are much more natural because
it makes sense.
You know,
makes sense.
It feels like it's coming at you at how it would in real life, so you could kind of just react normally, and it feels pretty natural. I think just kind of swinging your arms versus hitting buttons on a controller, you know?
True, true. I can see that. When you are actually immersed in that world, the feeling must be really different.
Yeah, yeah. It's still fun. Like, I've watched other people play it on a TV, you know, because you can hook up the VR headsets to a TV a lot of the time, and you can watch other people play it. But yeah, I'd say if you have the opportunity to actually go play it yourself at some point, I'd recommend it. It's a fun time. All right, well, that is our show for the week, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in to episode 7 of Nintendo Everything Refresh. Again, if you've been listening to all of our episodes, thank you so much. We really appreciate it. If you know anyone who would like this kind of thing, please spread the word. We are always trying to grow, and the more people we can get who want to hear us nerd out about Nintendo games and video game news for a while, the happier we will be. So, and along those lines, if you have anything that you would love for us to talk about in the future, just let us know. You can drop us a comment on YouTube, or you can reach out via our email address, nerefreshpodcast@gmail.com. The email is in our show notes. So drop us a line, and I think I said this last time, but if you reach out with a good fan question, there's a pretty good chance we'll feature you on one of these slower weeks. So again, thank you so much for tuning in, and we will be back next week with everything new in the world of Nintendo. See you guys later.